Hello, my name is Christopher Lynn, and I'll be bringing us through the final workbook today, covering the SWOT analysis, the McKinsey 7S, and our conclusion. So first, to start off, I'm going to be going over our SWOT analysis, kind of talking about some of our strategies going forward that we recommend for Celsius, then the impact it's going to have on the McKinsey 7S structure, and finally our conclusion. So, our SWOT analysis. We looked at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for Celsius in the industry. So to start off with strengths, Better For You brand equity. They do a really good job in portraying how their product has clean ingredients and is kind of the healthy alternative in the energy drink and stimulant-based beverage industry. Second, they have a strong distribution partnership with Pepsi. This allows them to get their product into the hands of wholesalers, consumers, and retailers with ease by leveraging Pepsi's existing infrastructure for distribution. And third, they have a multi-brand portfolio. They've recently acquired drinks like Alani, Rockstar, and others to kind of grow their reach to consumers and break into different niches, although Celsius, the beverage, remains their true gold star. Next, weaknesses. Again, even though they have this extensive deal with Pepsi for distribution, about 85% plus of their revenue comes from this deal. That can be a weakness in terms of Pepsi having a lot of negotiating power when they come to the table to renegotiate the contract. And this puts Celsius at a weak point as they're putting all their eggs in one basket, so to speak. So if anything goes wrong between that partnership or Pepsi pulls out, they're essentially stuck. They don't really have any of their own distribution infrastructure to fill the gap that Pepsi currently does. They have, again, going into the next point, they have limited distribution infrastructure of their own, definitely a strategic vulnerability. And then also, I mentioned that they've acquired some of these brands recently. They have a high debt burden from some of these acquisitions, leaving them, with cash flow pressure, and continued good performance of all their brands is needed in order to sustain this debt. So some opportunities within the industry for Celsius. The Better For You and health trends. They do it well already, but there are new health trends constantly emerging on social media and new Better For You kind of like lifestyle type things coming out. So being able to capitalize on the new trends coming out will only further expand their reach. E-commerce channels, direct to consumer, definitely a big opportunity in maybe taking some of that reliance on Pepsi away and shifting it to some of their own distribution. And then third, creator economy, community partnerships. They do some of these already, but being able to continue to leverage these will only prove more valuable with creators having larger and larger audiences as social media grows. Finally, some threats. Threat of substitutes. As I talked about in a previous video, the energy drink market and industry has a real risk of substitutes for a lot of the key players because the ease of switching for consumers is just so easy. There's no real cost associated with it. FDA and regulatory affairs for caffeine. There have been a lot of legislation passed recently, or possible legislation coming up regarding the amount of caffeine that's okay to have for kids, and different caffeine requirements becoming more stringent. So definitely something to keep in mind and could be a possible threat for Celsius. And then Monster and Red Bull rivalry. They are the two incumbents in the industry and they hold a large market share. So being able to go up against them and having they have so many resources, that's definitely a big threat for Celsius. So moving on, the strategic pivot. We boiled these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats down into 4 distinct strategies that we think are the best for Celsius to adapt going forward. First, distribution diversification. Second, regulatory resilience. Third, global expansion. And fourth, lifestyle branding expansion. The destination becomes a vertically integrated lifestyle brand for Celsius. So, deep dive into strategy number 1. As I mentioned before, Pepsi controls about 85% of their revenue from their distribution contract with Celsius. This creates a major risk, putting all the eggs in one basket, so to speak, and kind of leaves them relying on Pepsi for their brand to stay afloat. So our strategy is to adopt a varied distribution style, where we still use Pepsi for 40 to 50% of the distribution, We believe Pepsi, is a really important partner for Celsius, but also expanding something like direct to consumer via Celsius's website. So expanding that channel to about 20%. E-commerce sites like Amazon would be another 20%. And then gyms, specialty retail, that sort of thing would be about another 15%. And to get into those specialty retail spots like gyms, you're going to need to leverage maybe some, unconventional distributors that you're not currently working with. But overall, this kind of takes some of the eggs out of the basket, allows, the Pepsi deal to still support Celsius and still to leverage Pepsi's distribution infrastructure, while also expanding into other channels to make sure that they are resilient in the face of any difficulties with Pepsi. So next up, strategy 2, regulatory resilience. The 3 goals here are claim credibility, being able to back up what's on the package and what's in the advertisements for Celsius. Regulatory readiness, being able to adapt to FDA changes and being able to anticipate the FDA changes before they actually become law. And then third is ingredient moats, being able to have proprietary blends, patent different flavors and drink combinations, so that it's harder for competitors to imitate. So the 2 ways that Celsius should go about achieving these goals is through an R&D engine, investing a lot in R&D, having a team of scientists and drink experts there for continuous innovation, product reformulation in the face of any regulatory changes, or just to innovate new products. As we talked about, the cost of switching is very low, so being able to keep those new products coming is very important for Celsius. And then also legal and compliance, being able to monitor the FDA, what's going on in the industry, making sure labels live up to the FDA standards and are actually true, and also advertising is also true. Third, global expansion. This is a big one. So Celsius is currently concentrated mostly in North America, but we see a possible European expansion to be very favorable for Celsius. So the European opportunity, Celsius currently has low penetration in the market, with $4.2 billion market size coming up next year and a greater than 10% CAGR. This is an excellent opportunity, an excellent position for Celsius to be in, to be able to capitalize on this market. So the 3 main pillars of the strategy going into the European market would be kind of a localized strategy for the first one. This means, adapting their flavors and branding and messaging all to the specific region of where they are. Europe has a lot of different countries, consumers with different preferences, so being able to adapt to each consumer is very important. Infrastructure, they need to have decentralized offices as well as distribution infrastructure. Again, each country is different, and by having decentralized offices, they're able to be more in touch with the specific market that they're in and adapt the product to that. And then overall, it just will be a less reliance on North American distribution and sales channels, and could prove to be very valuable for Celsius and significantly add to their revenue, making them a global brand rather than just an American brand. So strategy number 4 that we're recommending here is lifestyle branding expansion. Celsius currently works with many creators. They do a good job of this, but we think it can be expanded even further. The first part of this would be expand the creator community. They partner with some big names to promote the drink, but increasing the budget to get even more creators on board. And these creators have massive reach, racking up millions, if not tens of millions of views every single month. So being able to reach all those consumers that Celsius might not otherwise be able to reach, definitely a big opportunity, and one that should be capitalized on, even if it costs a little more money. Continuous trend monitoring, spotting trends on social media when they're in their early stages, kind of jumping on the bandwagon, so to speak, and being able to put out content on their social media going along with these trends to reach consumers that they might not otherwise reach, can definitely be a big help to Celsius and put them in a great position to attract new consumers to the brand. And then finally, a brand ambassador program. This would be for some of the smaller creators, but it would give them kind of a incentive to promote the product, where they get X number of cents per can sold from their link or that sort of thing. So it really incentivizes them to promote the product and keep promoting it, even if they may have smaller audiences. This can be rolled out kind of to the masses of creators and still generate that growth that Celsius has come to know. So, looking at all these strategies, we're going to take a look at the McKinsey 7S here before we wrap up. So, the shared values of Celsius are to inspire, support, and empower active consumers to live fit by providing innovative, scientifically backed, and functional, better for you beverage alternatives that boost metabolism and provide sustained energy. That's the ultimate goal of Celsius, and these strategies, coupled with the McKinsey 7S framework, will help them achieve that, along with growing into new markets, I should say. So first, style. It's going to be a creator-first culture, data-driven decisions. This is going to be especially important as they pivot to direct-to-consumer. Skills, digital marketing, and then some science, digital marketing in relation to the creators and the creator economy, and then science in the R&D side of things, being able to reformulate and adapt to new regulations from the FDA. Structure, decentralized. Expanding into the European market requires a decentralized structure, and Celsius needs to adopt that in order to meet the preferences of different markets within Europe. And then staff, there is going to be some staff hiring required for some of these strategies, specifically European talent to manage the distribution over there, R&D folks to add to the R&D team and be able to rapidly reformulate like we talked about, and then also regulatory compliance type staff who will help Celsius maintain good standing with the FDA. And then finally, systems, customer resource management, especially important in direct-to-consumer analytics, and then compliance tracking to make sure that they are in line with all different regulations set forth by the FDA. So, in conclusion, Celsius is not just a beverage company. It is a lifestyle brand in early construction. Through diversifying, through breaking the Pepsi dependency, fortifying through robust R&D and compliance, and then amplifying through global lifestyle expansion into new markets, Celsius positions themselves as the brand of the future and truly puts themselves in a place for rapid growth and a seat in with the big players in the industry. Thank you.